The world, as well as the Catholic community, was shocked when Pope Francis's letter to Luis Antonio Tagle was suddenly made public. This letter, which contained facts that might fundamentally change our understanding of the Holy See, was not your typical message. A place with strong government in addition to faith. Most importantly, it wasn't until after Pope Francis's passing that this long secret letter was made public. The letter's secrecy just heightens the interest in what it might contain. In addition to discussing the Church's future, the letter contains advice that may have a significant influence on how the Church is led and grows in the 21st century. Is it possible that this letter is just leadership advice? Or are there shocking facts that Pope Francis purposefully concealed until a pivotal point, when the enigmatic letter was discovered, in order to completely comprehend its significance? We need to go back to the social and historical background Pope Francis had to deal with during his pontificate. In 2013, when Francis took over as head of the Church, the Catholic Church and the rest of the world were facing urgent problems. Incidents involving sexual abuse among the clergy, internal church strife, and discussions about social concerns like women's rights, migration, and climate change. Pope Francis consistently promoted the idea of a lowly church that is accessible to everyone, particularly the underprivileged and disenfranchised. He brought the church into a new age where love and service were its guiding principles. Luis Antonio Tagle became one of the Pope's most reliable associates in this regard. Raised in Manila, Tagle was not only an exceptional leader, but also a shining example of humility, always being near the people and taking a pragmatic approach to social issues. As the head of the Pontifical Council for Advancing the New Evangelization, Tagler's influence inside the church was not restricted to the Philippines, but rather had a significant worldwide impact. With the confidence of Pope Francis, Tagle carried out significant work in evangelization and helped to create a contemporary vision of the church that transcended religious rites and was closely entwined with civic engagement. Pope Francis' letter to Luis Antonio Tagle was not your average directive or administrative paper. In actuality, the handwritten letter, which lacked a public seal, was quite private. This made it very evident that the Pope wanted to address Tagle, the person he trusted to continue his work in the future, with a special message. It was no accident that this letter was kept a secret for so long. Pope Francis may have made the conscious choice to safeguard the message's confidentiality so that it would only be seen by those who needed it most, especially during a time when the Church was going through significant upheavals. The letter was more than just a leadership-style manual. It was a long-term plan, a blueprint for the Church's future. Pope Francis skillfully ingrained the fundamental principles of compassion, humility, and faith that he wanted to see endure in a church that serves rather than rules. In addition to serving as a reminder of accountability, this demonstrated a strong commitment to a leadership style that is grounded in community service rather than power. The publication of this letter, particularly in the wake of Pope Francis's passing, has provoked discussion about the Church's future in addition to upsetting the Catholic community. Will Pope Francis' legacy be passed down to Luis Antonio Tagle? Freddie, could this letter hold the secret to figuring out what the Church should do in the 21st century? As societal and religious issues get more complicated, these problems will be brought up in conversations about the Church's future. The letter is a direct indication of major changes in the Catholic Church's leadership, in addition to being a personal message. Deciphering the communication. The contents of Pope Francis's letter to Luis Antonio Tagle caught the attention of both the Catholic community and others who were concerned about the future of the Catholic Church worldwide as soon as it was made public. This was not your typical letter. It served as a spiritual testament and a guiding message, offering guidance on faith, leadership, and hope for a better future for the Church, particularly under the direction of young, kind people like Luis Antonio. In addition to expressing his gratitude and complete faith in Tagle's talents, Pope Francis conveyed a message about the kind of leadership he hoped would endure, one that is founded on service and love for the community rather than fame or power. Initially, the Pope Francis begins the letter by expressing his sincere appreciation to Luis Antonio Tagle. It is a clear acknowledgement of the traits that Pope Francis believed were crucial in a leader: humility, compassion, and a dedication to helping the underprivileged, rather than merely a thank you for his contributions to the church in the Philippines and around the world. Though the expressions of gratitude were more than just formalities, they conveyed a strong message about how the church ought to function, to assist people in need, not to pursue fame or power. Tagle, a Manila native, was once again trusted by Pope Francis. Believing that Tagle was the one who could guide the church into better times because of his modest upbringing and values, Pope Francis then emphasized a leadership viewpoint that is not often found in church writings. The goal of leadership is service, not power. Throughout his pontificate, Pope Francis has made this the central theme of his teachings. He reaffirmed in the letter that genuine leadership must put the needs of others above one's own, must pay attention to and comprehend the feelings of others, particularly the underprivileged and disenfranchised. Pope Francis thought Tiger could uphold these principles and lead the church in the way he had modeled: close, modest, and loving. He therefore underlined that Tagle must constantly keep the people's hearts in mind and put them at the center of every choice and action. Pope Frank's recognition of the three main causes that he and Tagle shared, poverty, migration, and environmental protection, was the letter's third message. During Pope Francis's pontificate, these concerns gained prominence, particularly because he regularly denounced policies and injustices that hurt the environment and the impoverished. He urged Tagle to keep raising these concerns in the letter, not only within the church but also in international fora where they might lead to reform. Pope Francis wanted Tagle to be a leader who could affect social and global change, in addition to being a priest or bishop, and this was a key component of his mission. Pope Francis favored the church taking an active role in resolving these problems, rather than ignoring them. The letter served as more than just a leadership manual. It served as a prelude to the church's future as well. It made it quite evident that Pope Francis saw Luis Antonio Tagle as someone who could carry on his legacy and guide the church into the ensuing decades, rather than as a short-term leader. The letter's most notable line, "Never lose sight of the heart of the people," was a pledge to Tagle's immense responsibility as well as leadership guidance. This was a powerful lesson about how the church must change, overcome its present problems, and be ready for what is ahead. Nevertheless, the letter conveyed a strong message about leadership and humility, in addition to outlining the duties Tagle would take on. Pope Francis, who had always been connected to the impoverished and dedicated to helping them, felt that these principles needed to be strengthened going forward in addition to being maintained. Luis Antonio Tagle's leadership will be centered around this. If he is successful, this letter from Pope Francis would demonstrate such expectations. This letter's appearance has raised even more urgent concerns about the church's future. Will Luis Antonio Tagle be able to live up to these standards? Is he able to carry on the principles that Pope Francis established throughout his pontificate? Will Pope Francis's advice be followed by the Catholic Church across the world? These questions are crucial to comprehending the Catholic Church's future in the 21st century and will all need to be addressed in the upcoming years. This letter is more than just a leadership manual. It has a mission and a strong appeal for reform in the Catholic Church and for everyone who will carry on Pope Francis' legacy. We will have a better idea of what the church needs to do next when we keep looking at this letter in the light of history. The most crucial question, though, is whether Luis Antonio Tagle will be the one to shoulder this burden. The answer to such question will be based on his prior actions, and it's possible that this letter will be the key that unlocks the future. The church's future. The world, not just the Catholic community, started to consider the deep significance of the directives included in Pope Francis's letter when it was made public. In addition to demonstrating his confidence in Luis Antonio Tagle, Pope Francis' decision to send such a strategic and intimate letter also sent a statement about the future course the Catholic Church ought to take. This letter is a key that opens a door full of challenges and hope for people who think carefully about the Church's future. First and foremost, the letter was a potent message laying the groundwork for a new era of church leadership, not only a letter of love from Pope Francis to Tagle, Pope Francis has continuously demonstrated a strong commitment to tackling societal concerns like poverty, the environment, migration, and human rights protection during his time as Pope. But in order for these principles to be upheld and developed further, a leader who possessed traits like his own humility and compassion was necessary. As a result, Pope Francis firmly said in his letter that Luis Antonio Tagle, with his exceptional traits, would be the one to continue his legacy and guide the Church into the future. With the insightful advice in the letter, Pope Francis not only gave Tagle a lot of responsibility, but he also made it apparent that he expected a new generation of leaders in the Church and in the larger framework of contemporary society. The Church that Pope Francis envisioned is one that walks with the people in every situation rather than separating from them. Pope Francis and Tagle envisioned a church in which genuine and profound service to everyone, particularly the underprivileged, would be the true test of leadership rather than fame or wealth. The letter has created a clear path for the future in the contemporary setting, when the church is confronted with a number of new obstacles, such as internal conflicts, the emergence of complicated societal issues, and modernizing the way the church's message is delivered. Pope Francis hoped that the public release of this letter would serve as a reminder of the leadership and service that are based on love, in addition to confirming a personal relationship. The Church requires leaders who can truly grasp the needs, pains, and joys of the communities they serve, in addition to having a strategic vision. The significant responsibilities that Pope Francis gave Luis Antonio Tagle demonstrate the high expectations placed on him. Tagle had already been given important roles in the Church, including heading the Pontifical Council for advancing the new evangelization prior to the letter's disclosure. In addition to administrative expertise, this position required tact while handling social and religious matters, inventiveness in determining suitable methods to interact with and instruct the younger generation of believers. Through his efforts to defend the underprivileged, support environmental causes, and advance interfaith harmony, issues that Pope Francis has long held in the highest regard, Tagle has proven his leadership in this capacity. People were also prompted to consider the changes that had occurred within the Church by the letter. The lesson on humility and leadership was among the most crucial. Pope Francis not only wanted a skilled leader, but also one who will restore the Church to its core mission of aiding the underprivileged and disenfranchised without pursuing fame or fortune. Pope Francis has always upheld this principle, and everyone who follows him will be guided by it. Therefore, choosing a successor involves more than simply experience or leadership skills. It also involves knowing the sentiments of the populace. Pope Francis stressed in the letter that Luis Antonio Tagle must constantly maintain a profound awareness of the hearts of the people, regardless of the challenges. This not only exemplifies Tagle's traits, but also serves as a reminder to the Church as a whole of its purpose to serve, and how it must react and serve in challenging situations, including not just religious matters, but also societal and international challenges. A range of viewpoints were generated by the letter's public reactions both inside and outside the Vatican. Luis Antonio Tagle's supporters thought that this would be an indication of a major shift inside the Church that would continue to adhere to the principles established by Pope Francis. Not everyone, though, approved of this modification. Conservative elements in the Church were worried that this leadership shift might cause discord among the ranks and that such big changes might erode traditional beliefs. This has caused a great rift, prompting many to consider how Pope Francis' legacy will be carried on. Will the Church follow in his footsteps, or will it revert to more traditional principles? Despite being personal, the letter has a significant impact on the Church's future and poses crucial queries regarding leadership and the direction the organization should take in the ensuing decades. Will Pope Francis's legacy be carried on by Luis Antonio Tagle? Will he be able to implement the improvements Pope Francis had in mind for the Church? Without a doubt, the responses to these queries will have a significant effect on both the Church and the wider society. Luis Antonio Tagle's voyage. One of the most well-known members of the Catholic Church, both domestically in the Philippines and globally, is Luis Antonio Tagle. Tagler has continuously demonstrated during his career that he is a humble leader who is deeply committed to the community and has an unwavering concern for the underprivileged. Pope Francis had a great deal of faith in Tagle's ability to uphold the principles he had established during his pontificate, which is why he chose to include him in many of the Church's most important responsibilities. Tagle came from a humble background in Manila and had a long and life-changing journey to become one of the most powerful people in the Catholic Church. Tagle had aspirations of becoming a doctor before he entered the seminary. However, a fortuitous meeting with a priest fundamentally altered his professional trajectory. Tagle met a priest who had a significant impact on his life when he was a young man and joined a youth club at his parish. From the time Tagle was ordained as a priest and then as a bishop, this priest inspired a strong belief in him that he could accomplish more by pursuing the ministry. Tagle proved to be a leader who had a strong bond with the populace, especially the underprivileged. In addition to having a strategic vision for the church, he had a deep understanding of the pain that the underprivileged and disenfranchised face in society. For this reason, Pope Francis has consistently entrusted him with significant duties, ranging from heading the Philippine Church to assuming pivotal positions at the Vatican. Tagle performed his duties with love and respect for all believers, irrespective of their circumstances or place of residence. According to him, the church is a caring community where everyone should be supported and cared for, not merely a place of worship. Because of this, he is a perfect example for everyone who wants to lead with humility, service, and a belief in a church that is always accessible to everyone, especially the underprivileged. Throughout his professional life, Tagle has shown leadership both domestically and abroad. He has taken part in a number of big international church gatherings, contributing thoughts and recommendations on important topics the church faces, including migration, environmental preservation, and poverty alleviation. Additionally, he has been outspoken in his support of campaigns to defend the rights of women and other socially oppressed groups. All of these activities have aided Tagle in developing a reputation as a leader who is strongly linked to social ideals that transcend the church and address important society challenges. Tagle's skill with the media is another important aspect that has contributed to his prominence. In order to make younger generations realize that the church is a place where they may find empathy and compassion, Tagle is not hesitant to embrace social media and contemporary communication technologies. In today's world, where a large number of young people are leaving conventional religious institutions, not just in the Philippines, this is very crucial. However, Tagle also holds a lot of power in other nations and at the Vatican. He has gained a solid reputation in the international Catholic community thanks to his leadership of the Pontifical Council for the promotion of the new evangelization and his participation in international debates on Yansan social issues. Tagler's efforts to increase the church's influence have been highly valued by Pope Francis, especially in areas like Asia, where the Catholic Church has many obstacles in terms of expansion and public participation. In Pope, in addition to acknowledging Luis Antonio Tagle's leadership skills, Francis's letter expressed complete faith in him and supported a new generation of leaders who are genuinely human and involved in pressing social issues. Many people both inside and outside the church have been forced to consider the church's future under Tagle's direction as a result of this. In addition to whether Tagle can carry on Pope Francis's legacy, the question is if he can preserve the fundamental principles established by the Pope: love, humility, and service to the underprivileged. In addition to being a role model for leadership in the Catholic Church, Tagle aspires to a just society in which everyone is given equal treatment and growth chances. Through his efforts, he has confirmed that love and service are the most crucial components of leadership, and that the Church will expand sustainably in the future thanks to these ideals. Tagle's actions and attributes are not just a continuation of what Pope Francis started. Rather, they are a development of it. It is obvious that Luis Antonio Tagle is a formidable contender to guide the Church into the future. His path, nevertheless, is not merely one of continuation. It is also one of growth and adjustment to the new difficulties the Church will encounter in the 21st century. Everyone is anxiously anticipating Tagler's response to the important question of whether he can implement the changes the Church needs to confront the challenges of the contemporary world. These organizations were concerned that these modifications would jeopardize the Church's stability and distort the traditional principles they believed to be unalterable. However, one thing is for sure. Within the Church, Pope Francis's letter has generated a lot of encouragement. In addition to conveying a message regarding leadership responsibilities, the letter to the Pope reaffirmed the need for humanistic and loving principles to form the foundation of the Church's future. Francis did not just select a successor. His legacy serves as a reminder of the value of humility, sacrifice, and dedication in leadership. This is an approach that has a significant impact and inspires not only Luis Antonio Tagle, but also anyone hoping to hold a leadership position in the Church in the future. Despite being personal, the letter has served as an inspiration to many religious leaders and believers, offering a picture of a humble and loving Church. In addition to a change in leadership, the leadership transition involves a change in how the Church will operate in a world that is becoming more complicated and diverse. Future leaders like Tagle will have to deal with a different world where concerns like environmental preservation, social fairness, and the rights of underrepresented groups are more important than ever. In his letter, Pope Francis brought up a significant issue about the Church's future. Will the Church revert to more conservative ideals, or will it keep moving in the direction he established? His successor's selection has a significant impact on the world. In addition to the Church, the Church will require leaders who can comprehend these new problems and provide innovative answers to preserve unity among the faithful and communities in a day where societal issues are growing more complicated and global. Pope Francis' letter had a significant impact on the change of leadership. So, in addition to providing his successor with a leadership path, the Pope conveyed the fundamental principles he upheld during his pontificate through his words and unwavering trust. Love, humility, and a Church that helps the underprivileged. Despite the difficulties facing the contemporary world, these principles will remain the cornerstone of the Catholic Church's future expansion. Pope Francis made it clear in the letter that the Church requires a leader who can not only oversee but also transform and mold the Church's future in the modern world. Luis Antonio Tagle was selected to continue Pope Francis's legacy because of his special traits: humility, compassion, and dedication to helping the underprivileged. Even though Tagle was not named as the Pope's direct successor, the letter made it abundantly evident how important it is to select a leader based on their ideals as well as their managerial abilities. The change in leadership is not a straightforward replacement, though. Over the course of its more than 2,000-year existence, the Catholic Church has undergone significant change and conservative aspects. Despite being essential, it continues to encounter opposition from individuals who want to uphold traditional values. So, there will always be disagreements within the Church on who should be chosen as a successor. There are differing opinions on Pope Francis's letter. Some are adamant about carrying on the reform path he initiated, while others worry that too much change would erode the Church's core values. In any case, the letter from the Pope brought up a crucial issue. Will the Church return to more conservative ideals, or will it continue on the path of service, humility, and love that Pope Francis chartered? Selecting a candidate for leadership is only one aspect of this dilemma. Another is determining the Church's future course. Luis Antonio Tagle might be the heir to Pope Francis's legacy in this quickly evolving world, but he will face many challenges. He will have to contend with a Church that is not only firmly anchored in religious principles, but also has to maintain unity within the worldwide Church while handling difficult societal challenges like protecting the impoverished and solving environmental issues. Pope Francis does, however, provide his successor with a clear plan in this letter, one that centers on the value of humility, love, and service in all aspects of leadership. Pope Francis laid the groundwork that will continue to influence the Church's destiny. And the Church may move forward into a new period of service, humility, and love with Luis Antonio's story. It remains to be seen if he can live up to these lofty standards, or if the Church will find new leaders. Nonetheless, Pope Francis's letter will always represent the Catholic Church's preparation for the future and its hopeful course. Can Tagle guide the Church into a new era and continue the legacy of Pope Francis? Pope Francis, please leave a comment with your ideas. Remember to like and subscribe, and keep checking back for more.